Wyoming Territory, 1885. A cold wind howled across the plains, carrying the scent of snow and sorrow as Rebecca James stood on the porch of what remained of her family's homestead. At 22, she had already endured more hardship than most faced in a lifetime. Her delicate fingers clutched a telegram that had arrived just days after the fire that claimed half their ranch house and all their winter stores. The message was brief but devastating. Her father would not be returning from his cattle drive to Cheyenne. Bandits had made sure of that. Rebecca brushed a strand of honey-blonde hair from her face, her blue eyes reflecting the bleak landscape before her. The neighboring homesteaders had already abandoned their claims, driven away by harsh winters and harsher men. Out here, she believed, dreams came to die, just like her parents had. A woman alone has no place on the frontier. The banker in town had told her yesterday, his eyes already calculating the value of her land. You should sell before winter truly sets in. I can offer you enough for passage back east to your mother's people. But the East held nothing for her. No family remained in Boston who would welcome the daughter of a man who had abandoned society for the promise of the West. Besides, this land was all she had left of her father's dreams. All she wanted was to somehow keep it, to survive, though deep in her heart, Rebecca believed she was fundamentally unworthy of happiness in this cruel territory. The frontier had taught her that hope was a luxury she could no longer afford. As the early November wind cut through her woolen dress, Rebecca turned back to the half-ruined house. Winter was coming, and she had precious little time to prepare if she intended to survive it alone. 3 days later, the first major snowfall threatened. Rebecca struggled to repair the barn roof, her hands raw and bleeding from the rough wood. The ladder shifted beneath her, and suddenly she was falling, the world tilting around her. She landed hard, the breath knocked from her lungs, pain shooting through her ankle. As darkness crept into the edges of her vision, she heard hoofbeats approaching, likely opportunists coming to claim what little she had left. The frontier gave nothing. She thought bitterly as consciousness slipped away. It only took. Isaac Blackett had been riding for 2 days straight, tracking a small herd of Mustangs through the foothills when the storm began rolling in. At 25, he'd spent most of his life on horseback, working ranches from Texas to Montana. His latest employer, the Diamond Bar Ranch, had sent him to purchase supplies in town and scout for strays before the winter locked everything down. Unlike many who drifted through these territories, Isaac believed in something most cowboys found foolish, the possibility of goodness in this harsh land. He'd seen too many men harden their hearts against everything but survival, becoming as empty and cold as the winter plains. That wasn't the life he wanted. Come on, Jasper, he urged his paint horse forward through the thickening snow, spotting smoke from a chimney in the distance. Let's see if they'll offer shelter until this passes. As they approached the homestead, Isaac immediately sensed something was wrong. The barn door swung wildly in the wind, and a ladder lay toppled beside the structure. That's when he saw her, a slender figure crumpled on the ground, unmoving in the swirling snow. He dismounted before Jasper had fully stopped, rushing to her side. Her honey-blonde hair was spread across the frozen ground, her face pale but beautiful even in unconsciousness. Isaac checked for injuries, finding her ankle swollen but no obvious serious harm. "Miss? Can you hear me?" he asked, his voice gentle as he brushed snow from her face. Rebecca's eyes fluttered open, focusing on a stranger's face, a young man with earnest hazel eyes and a day's worth of light stubble covering his square jaw. His Stetson had been pushed back, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at his temples. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to sit up despite the pain. "What do you want?" "Isaac Blackett, miss. I ride for the Diamond Bar." His hands hovered, ready to steady her, but not presuming to touch. "I was just looking for shelter from the storm. Seems like you could use some help." "I don't need charity," Rebecca said sharply, though her voice wavered as pain shot through her ankle. "Not offering charity, just a fair trade. Shelter for labor," he replied, his eyes taking in the half-repaired barn and the damaged house beyond. "That ankle won't bear weight for at least a week." Rebecca wanted to refuse, but the darkening sky and her throbbing ankle made such pride foolish. "I'm Rebecca James. My father's homestead," she said finally. "You can stay in the barn until the storm passes." Isaac shook his head. "Not leaving you alone injured with the storm coming. Let's get you inside." Then I'll tend to my horse and see to those repairs." To her surprise, he didn't wait for permission, simply gathered her into strong arms and carried her toward the house. Rebecca stiffened at the contact. It had been so long since anyone had touched her with gentleness. "Put me down," she protested weakly. "The neighbors will talk." Isaac gave her a curious look. "From what I saw riding in, your nearest neighbors must be 5 miles away. Not much gossiping at that distance." "They're gone anyway," Rebecca admitted as he pushed open the door with his boot. "Everyone's gone." Inside, Isaac settled her on a chair before building up the fire. The house was neat but Spartan, with one section closed off where the roof had partially collapsed. "You're alone out here?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. Rebecca lifted her chin. "My father died on the trail to Cheyenne 3 weeks ago. I'm managing fine." Isaac didn't challenge her obvious lie, instead dampening his bandana with water from a bucket and wrapping it around her swollen ankle. His touch was surprisingly gentle for hands so weathered by work. "Well, Miss James, looks like I arrived just in time. That storm's going to drop a foot of snow by morning." "Why would you help a stranger?" she asked, suspicion clouding her blue eyes. Isaac looked up, something warm and unexpected in his gaze. "Out here, we help each other survive. That's the code I live by. Now rest that ankle while I see to the animals." Before she could protest, he was gone, leaving Rebecca staring at the door with confusion. In her experience, men on the frontier took what they wanted. They didn't repair roofs and tend to injured women without expecting something in return. Every instinct told her not to trust this stranger's kindness. It would only sharpen the inevitable disappointment when he proved to be like all the rest. By morning, snow blanketed the land, transforming the harsh landscape into something eerily beautiful. Rebecca woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, hobbling to the kitchen to find Isaac at her stove. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "Hope you don't mind me raiding your pantry. Figured you could use a hot meal." Rebecca leaned heavily on a makeshift crutch he must have fashioned for her. "I thought you'd be gone by first light." In that, he nodded toward the window, where snow continued to fall steadily. "Besides, I fixed the worst of your barn roof yesterday, but there's still work to do on that house." He poured her a cup of coffee. "Unless you're in a hurry to be rid of me." The truth was, the house had never felt so warm, so alive since her father's passing. But admitting that felt dangerous. "You can stay until the snow stops," she conceded, accepting the coffee. "But I can't pay you much." "Room and board is payment enough for now," Isaac replied. "Diamond Bar won't expect me back for 2 weeks. I told them I might track those Mustangs a fair distance." Over the next several days, Isaac proved himself unlike any man Rebecca had encountered in the territory. He worked from dawn until dusk, repairing the fire-damaged section of the house, reinforcing the barn, and chopping enough firewood to last weeks. In the evenings, he shared stories of his travels that made Rebecca remember there was a world beyond her isolation. "Why haven't you settled somewhere?" she asked one night as they sat by the fire. "Most cowboys I've met are either running from something or toward something." Isaac considered her question, his face thoughtful in the firelight. "I suppose I'm looking for something that feels right. A place worth stopping for." His eyes met hers briefly before returning to the flames. "My pa always said a man needs 3 things: honest work, open skies, and something to protect. I've got the first 2. And the third?" Rebecca asked softly. "Haven't found it yet. Or maybe I haven't earned it." He smiled, but something like sadness lingered in his eyes. "What about you? Will you stay here alone?" Rebecca stiffened. "This land is all I have left. I won't abandon it." "Wasn't suggesting you should," Isaac replied. "Just wondering about your plan." "Survive winter. Plan in spring. One day at a time," she said, the mantra she'd repeated since her father's death. Isaac nodded, respecting her determination even as he recognized the fear beneath it. Sometimes surviving isn't enough reason to wake up each morning. His words struck a nerve Rebecca hadn't realized was exposed. "It's enough for me," she said sharply, rising despite her tender ankle. "Good night, Mr. Blackett." That night, lying alone in her bed, Rebecca wondered why his gentle observation had provoked such defense. Perhaps because in the quiet moments between chores, she'd begun to feel something beyond mere survival, something that frightened her more than the coming winter. The snow finally stopped after a week, but Isaac found more reasons to stay. A broken plow needed mending. The chicken coop required reinforcement against predators. Rebecca's ankle needed time to heal properly. Each morning, she expected to find him gone, and each morning, the relief at seeing him still there grew harder to hide. One afternoon, while Rebecca sorted through seeds saved for spring planting, Isaac returned from town with supplies and news. "Banker Hollister was asking about you," he said casually, unloading flour and coffee. "Seemed mighty interested in whether you were planning to sell." Rebecca's hands stilled. "He's been pressuring me since father died. Says a woman can't run a homestead alone. And what do you say? That I'd rather starve on my own land than prosper on someone else's charity." Isaac's laugh was warm and unexpected. "You're certainly stubborn enough to outlast most men I know." His expression grew serious. "But Hollister didn't strike me as the type to take no for an answer. Said something about your father owing on a loan." Rebecca paled. "That's impossible. Father owned this land outright." "Might be worth checking your father's papers," Isaac suggested. "Men like Hollister usually have documents to back their claims, legitimate or otherwise." That evening, they searched through her father's trunk, finding a mortgage agreement Rebecca had never known existed. Her father had indeed borrowed against the property the previous spring after losing cattle to rustlers. "He never told me," she whispered, hands trembling. $300 due by spring thaw or the land goes to auction." Isaac studied the paper carefully. "This interest rate is robbery. Your father was desperate. And now I have nothing to repay it with," Rebecca said, defeat washing over her for the first time since Isaac had known her. "Everything is gone. The cattle, our savings, everything." In the silence that followed, Isaac made a decision that would change both their lives. "I have money saved. Nearly $400 from my time at the Diamond Bar. It's yours." Rebecca stared at him in disbelief. "I can't take your savings. We barely know each other." "Consider it an investment, then." His voice was steady, his eyes never leaving hers. "I believe in this land. I believe in what you're trying to build here." "Why would you do that?" she asked, suspicious of kindness that seemed too good to be true. Isaac hesitated, then spoke the truth he'd been avoiding. "Because in 3 weeks here, I've felt more at home than in 10 years of drifting. Because I've watched you fight for this place with everything you have, and it makes me want to fight alongside you." His words hung in the air between them, too honest to be anything but truth, too meaningful to be ignored. Rebecca felt something crack within her, the protective shell she'd built around her heart since her father's death. "I can't promise you anything," she whispered. "I'm not asking for promises," Isaac replied. "Just a chance to help." The next morning, Rebecca woke to find Isaac gone, his bedroll empty in the front room where he'd been sleeping. Her heart sank with a weight that surprised her, until she spotted the note on the table. "Gone to Diamond Bar to collect my wages and give notice. Back in 4 days. Lock the doors at night." Isaac, for 4 days. Rebecca wrestled with emotions she'd thought herself incapable of feeling after so much loss. Hope was dangerous on the frontier. It made the inevitable disappointments sharper, the failures more crushing. Yet Isaac had planted seeds of possibility in ground she'd thought too barren for dreams. When hoofbeats approached on the 4th day, Rebecca found herself rushing to the door despite her resolution to remain guarded. But the rider wasn't Isaac. It was Banker Hollister and 2 men she didn't recognize. "Miss James," Hollister called, dismounting with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I've come to discuss your situation." "There's nothing to discuss," Rebecca replied, standing firm in the doorway. "I'll have your money by spring, as the agreement states." Hollister's smile faltered. "I'm afraid circumstances have changed. The bank is calling in the loan immediately, given your vulnerable position." "That's not what the contract says," Rebecca protested. "The contract includes provisions for immediate repayment if the bank deems the investment at risk," Hollister said smoothly. "A woman alone cannot possibly maintain this property. It's for your own good, really." "She's not alone." All heads turned to see Isaac riding up, his expression hard as he surveyed the scene. He dismounted and moved to stand beside Rebecca, his presence solid and reassuring. "Mr. Blackett," Hollister acknowledged with thinly veiled displeasure. "This is a private business matter between Miss James and the bank." "Is it?" Isaac asked. "Because it looks like intimidation to me." One of Hollister's companions stepped forward, hand drifting toward his holster. "Watch your tone, cowboy. That contract says payment is due by spring," Isaac continued, ignoring the threat. "Miss James will honor those terms." The bank has made its decision, Hollister insisted. Unless she can pay in full today, we'll begin foreclosure proceedings. Rebecca felt Isaac's hand touch hers briefly, a silent message passing between them. She stepped forward, chin raised. As it happens, Mr. Hollister, I can pay. In full. She turned to Isaac, who produced an envelope from his jacket. $315, Isaac said, counting out the money. Loan plus interest as specified. Hollister's face reddened as Isaac placed the cash in his reluctant hands. This doesn't end here, he muttered. Land this good won't stay in a woman's hands for long. Not in this territory. This land stays in the James family, Rebecca stated firmly. Now please leave my property. After the banker and his men departed, Rebecca turned to Isaac, emotions warring within her. You came back. I said I would, he replied simply. Most men's words out here are as substantial as dust in the wind. Isaac stepped closer, his voice low. I'm not most men, Rebecca. That night, as they sat before the fire, Rebecca finally asked the question that had been haunting her since he rode back into her life. What do you want from me, Isaac? From all of this? Isaac studied the flames for a long moment before meeting her gaze. When I first came to your door, I was just another drifter. No place to call home. No one who'd miss me if winter claimed me. His voice grew softer. But these weeks here, fixing your roof, sharing your table, I've started to want things I told myself weren't for men like me. What things? Rebecca whispered. Roots. Purpose. His eyes held hers. A partner to face each dawn with. Rebecca felt tears threatening, unfamiliar and unwelcome. The frontier takes everything eventually. My mother. My father. It will take anything else I dare to care for. Maybe, Isaac acknowledged. But what's the alternative? Living half alive, too afraid to reach for happiness because it might not last forever. His words struck directly at the fear that had been driving her, the belief that love and hope were luxuries the frontier would punish her for indulging in. I don't know how to trust that anything good can last out here, she admitted, more vulnerable than she'd allowed herself to be in years. Isaac took her hand, his calloused palm warm against her skin. Then let me show you one day at a time. As winter settled fully across the Wyoming Territory, Isaac and Rebecca fell into a rhythm of shared work and growing intimacy. He taught her to track game in the snow, ensuring fresh meat when supplies ran low. She showed him her mother's method for preserving vegetables that would see them through until spring. In the evenings, they planned improvements for the ranch, dreams that stretched beyond mere survival. By Christmas, something had shifted between them. The touch of hands while passing coffee lingered longer. Their eyes met across the room with meaning neither could deny. Yet both held back, afraid to disrupt the delicate balance they'd found. The new year brought visitors. Isaac's former employer from the Diamond Bar, delivering mail that had accumulated in town. Among the letters was one that caused Rebecca's face to pale. What is it? Isaac asked after their guests had departed. Rebecca's hands trembled as she clutched the letter. It's from my mother's cousin in Denver. She says she's arranged a position for me as a companion to an elderly lady. Says it's no life for a young woman alone on a failing homestead. Isaac felt his heart constrict. Is that what you want? No. The vehemence of her response surprised them both. But everyone seems so certain I can't succeed here. I'm not, Isaac said quietly. I believe in you. In us. It was the first time he'd spoken of them as a unit, a partnership beyond their daily cooperation. Rebecca looked up, searching his face for any sign of insincerity. Us, she echoed. Isaac stepped closer, his expression open and vulnerable in a way few men on the frontier ever allowed themselves to be. I love you, Rebecca James. I think I started falling the moment I found you in the snow. Every day since has only made me more certain. Rebecca felt tears spill down her cheeks, years of carefully constructed defenses crumbling in the face of his honest declaration. I'm scared, she whispered. Everyone I've ever loved has left me. I can't promise I'll live forever, Isaac said, brushing away her tears. No one out here can, but I can promise I'll never willingly leave your side. Not for all the gold in California or the cattle in Texas. He knelt before her, taking her hands in his. I don't have a ring yet, but I have my heart and my hands and my future. Would you share them with me? In that moment, Rebecca faced the choice that had been building since Isaac first carried her across the threshold, to cling to her belief that the frontier only took, never gave, or to embrace the possibility that even in this harsh land, love could take root and flourish. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, I will." Their first kiss tasted of salt, tears, and sweet promise, sealing a covenant stronger than any Rebecca had believed possible in her broken world. Their wedding was small but joyful, held in early spring at the tiny church in town. Rebecca wore her mother's dress, carefully altered, and carried wildflowers Isaac had gathered from the awakening meadows. The same neighbors who had once predicted her failure came bearing gifts and good wishes, drawn by the story of the cowboy who had chosen to stay and the woman strong enough to rebuild from ashes. As the winter's snow melted away, they worked side by side to transform the homestead. Isaac's skillful hands repaired what had been broken, while Rebecca's determination ensured nothing was forgotten. They purchased new cattle with the remainder of Isaac's savings and Rebecca's careful budget, starting the herd that would become their livelihood. Summer brought unexpected news that tested Rebecca's newfound faith and happiness. After weeks of unexplained illness each morning, the doctor confirmed what Isaac had begun to suspect. They would welcome a child with the autumn harvest. "Are you happy?" Isaac asked that night, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach as they lay in bed. Rebecca covered his hand with hers, remembering the girl who had stood alone on a broken porch less than a year ago, convinced that hope was a luxury she could never afford. "Happier than I believed possible," she admitted, "but still afraid. A child is so vulnerable, and the frontier so unforgiving." Isaac propped himself up on one elbow, looking into her eyes in the soft lamplight. "Remember what you told me when that late frost threatened our seedlings. We don't control the weather, only how we prepare for it." Rebecca smiled at hearing her own words reflected back. "When did you get so wise, cowboy?" "I married a very smart woman," he replied with a grin, kissing her softly. "Our child will have two parents who know how to survive out here, who know how to build something lasting from nothing." As summer turned to autumn, their preparations intensified. Isaac constructed a cradle from pine harvested from their own land, while Rebecca sewed tiny garments from fabric traded for their abundant garden harvest. The homestead that had once felt like a burden to be endured now hummed with purpose and life. In late September, just as the aspens began turning gold, Rebecca's labor began. After 18 hours that tested her strength to its limits, she delivered a healthy daughter with her father's dark hair and her mother's determined blue eyes. "Eleanor," Rebecca whispered as Isaac placed their swaddled daughter in her arms. They had chosen the name to honor Isaac's mother, creating a bridge between past and future. As Isaac sat beside her on the bed, his arm around her shoulders and his eyes full of wonder as he gazed at their child, Rebecca finally understood the truth that had eluded her for so long. The frontier didn't just take, it also gave. It gave strength to those who endured its challenges. It gave appreciation for the beauty hidden within its harshness. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to hope despite all evidence that hope was foolish, it gave second chances. 5 years later, Rebecca stood on the same porch where she had once faced a future of lonely struggle. Now the homestead had doubled in size, with a new barn housing twice the livestock her father had managed. The house had been expanded to accommodate their growing family. Eleanor now had a 2-year-old brother, William, and another sibling on the way. As she watched Isaac teaching Eleanor to ride her pony in the spring sunshine, William toddling after them on unsteady legs, Rebecca felt the familiar swell of gratitude that never seemed to diminish. The banker who had tried to take their land now tipped his hat respectfully when they brought their cattle to market. The neighbors who had abandoned their claims had returned, drawn by the success of the Blackett ranch and the community that had formed around it. Isaac looked up, catching her watching them. His smile, still youthful despite the responsibilities of the past 5 years, warmed her from across the yard. He said something to Eleanor, who giggled and guided her pony toward the house, her father walking alongside with William perched on his shoulders. "Mama, look how fast I can go," Eleanor called, her face alight with the fearless joy of a child who had never known the isolation and fear that had once defined this place. "I see you, my brave girl," Rebecca called back, one hand resting on her rounded belly. Isaac set William down to toddle toward his mother, then joined Rebecca on the porch, slipping an arm around her waist. "What has you looking so thoughtful today?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. Rebecca leaned into his embrace, watching their children, the living embodiment of the hope she had nearly abandoned. I was remembering the girl who believed the frontier could only take, never give. And what would you tell her now? Isaac asked. Rebecca turned to face the man whose promise had indeed brought hope to her broken world. The cowboy who had chosen to stay when everyone else had left. The partner who had shown her that even in the harshest landscape, love could not only survive but flourish. I would tell her that sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't facing down dangers alone, she said softly. It's opening your heart when everything tells you to keep it locked away. It's believing in promises even when experience says they're made to be broken. Isaac's eyes, the same warm hazel that had first looked upon her with kindness in her darkest moment, crinkled at the corners as he smiled. That sounds like wisdom earned the hard way. The best kind, Rebecca agreed, standing on tiptoe to kiss him as their children's laughter rang across the homestead. The sound of a promise kept and a future secured on the frontier that had finally, wonderfully, become home.